Welcome to the podcast where together, every Monday, we explore hospitality in its very broadest sense. From culture and cooking, cocktails and coffee, nutrition and farming, politics and animal welfare, organic and sustainability, family and business, entrepreneurship, and much, much more. Come and learn with me, Mark Cribb, about where our food and our drink comes from, and the businesses and, more importantly, the human beings that thrive on where we decide to spend our time and our money. Sign up to our weekly newsletter at humansofhospitality.co.uk and hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. I so loved my first research chat with Thomas Gent that when the opportunity came up to record a podcast, I took the chance to travel across the country and to meet him face to face. I adore Thomas's idea and the knowledge he has gained as a fourth generational farmer in Cambridgeshire. In a nutshell, Thomas spent a bit of downtime in lockdown pondering how to solve a global problem. But he did that by looking out of his window in a very real, local and achievable way that could have almost instant and measurable results. As is all too often the case, it's the simple ideas that look like they have the greatest opportunity. And if any of you listening have seen the Kissing the Ground documentary on Netflix, then this is the deep dive podcast equivalent of one way to help with the challenge of what is happening to our soil. And if any of you have listened to my podcast with Guy Singh Watson from Riverford about organic farming, where we also touch on how many harvests are left in our soil, then this will be a great follow-on episode. And for any of you simply interested in offsetting your carbon in your business, Thomas is now providing a measurable British solution. A solution where you can potentially visit the farm that is saving the carbon and see what they are doing, why they are doing it, and the difference it is making. And not only will you be saving carbon, you will be helping that farmer on a transition from intensive to regenerative farming. Perhaps helping the farmer fall back in love with ecology and biology and being custodians of the land for a short but oh so important period of time. And if you're a restaurateur or work in hospitality in general, perhaps just asking questions and caring more and more about where your food is coming from and who is growing it is a great start point building momentum to support British farmers who really want to be part of a positive movement and solution. I am utterly confident that Thomas and his gentle farming business and carbon credits are going to do well. I'll be looking into buying some myself and offering support, and I hope you will too. Enjoy the conversation. Thomas Gent, regenerative farmer and founder of Gentle Farming. Thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today. I say joining me, although it feels a bit like I'm joining you. Do you want to just explain to people listening, where are we in the world, Tom?
Yeah, so we are on our family farm in South Lincolnshire. It's like Lincolnshire, Cambridgeshire border, just above Cambridge. And yeah, you've come on our farm.
I have, yeah. So I'm sat here. We've got a couple of dogs next to us. I feel very country, actually. I've driven. I will, as everyone will appreciate who listens regularly, and anyone new will know, I'm going to ask lots of stupid town questions. So I feel very much like the town boy who's come out to the country, having just driven for the last 4 or 5 hours to get here. But nice part of the world, isn't it? Flat, as they say.
Yeah,
and
it's
lots
very
of
flat.
What do you call them? These irrigation kind of. I feel I'm actually going on a canal boat holiday in about a week's time, and I started to feel like, oh, is this what it's like? Because there's all these sort of irrigation channels everywhere, isn't there?
Yeah, it's very, very flat around here, and it's well known for being it. But the skies are very beautiful at the sunset. That's the main thing.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'm hoping that you're not being rude, but that we won't talk for quite that long. But maybe I'll stay for the day. So you're a multi-generational farmer, fourth generation, I believe. Can you just tell me a little bit about the farm and what you grow and how you ended up here, I guess?
Yeah, so I'm 23. I'm the fourth generation on our family farm. We've been farming regeneratively for about 12 years. My granddad and my dad made the transition when I was about 11ish. So yeah, we grow combinable crops pretty much, which is kind of all the crops you imagine, like wheat, oats, oilseed rape, barley, linseed, quinoa, a lot of grass, a lot of kind of forage crops that go into energy production as well. So quite a broad range of things, and that is one of the important things in regenerative farming, really.
Okay. Is combinable crops, is that a key thing as well? What does that phrase mean?
Yeah, so it kind of says what it means it says what it means. It's anything that goes through a combine.
Oh, okay.
So we grow things that will go through a combine.
See, I was thinking it was things that grew well together because they combined well. We've got combine harvester.
Combine harvester, yeah.
Okay.
Things that will go through a combine. And
Right.
the important thing we do that, it basically means is anything that grows and we can harvest that is above the ground. So the general terms are combinable crops or root crops.
See, I told you I was going to ask lots of town questions, didn't I? So
It's good.
I like that. It's just if you can't get it through a combine harvester, we're not doing it. Basically, you don't want to be crawling around on your hands and knees picking crops. Is that
Yeah,
what you're saying?
really the thing is we don't want to be disturbing the soil. That's kind of where we're at. We don't
Okay.
want to be pulling potatoes out, pulling carrots out of the ground on our system, especially on this type of soil. That's really where it comes down to. Our type of soil is not good enough really for potatoes, carrots, that kind of thing.
Okay. Can you be a regenerative farmer and pull out carrots and potatoes and all that kind of stuff somewhere else, or is it hard to grow those kind of crops in a regenerative way?
Yeah, well, it is. It's the soil disturbance is the issue. We can do obviously, looking after soil and environmental and all that kind of thing. The hard thing is getting the potato out of the ground without disturbing the soil when the potato is in the ground.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of research coming, and they are finding ways to do it.
Are they? Okay. Well, I won't go down that rabbit hole quite yet. I'll lose too many people. So the stuff you grow, this is you're not turning anything into final product. What is it? Where does it go to? You're selling it into the supermarkets or to be turned into grain. What happens to it?
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, we really sell on the open market. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of grain buying organizations, and we kind of buy and sell in different ways, kind of as the commodity market is. You can pre-sale, you can forward sale, that kind of thing, or you can take the price of the market. Like you say, pretty much all of our product has to be gone through a process. There's a few exceptions. The quinoa is sold to the British quinoa company, which they obviously use it, and then the energy production goes to a local anaerobic digestion plant, which produce green energy out of it. So that's kind of a direct to process kind of product. But yeah, like wheat, oats, barley, they need to be processed in some form.
And if you're going straight onto the commodities market, is this the same commodities market as something that's not grown regeneratively? Do you get a premium for it, or is it not?
So this is really where I started to look at. This is really what annoyed me, I guess. I took a load of our commodity, I think it was wheat, into one of our buyers, and it's kind of a massive, you probably can't imagine, but 100,000 ton grain store. We tipped in the shed, and kind of as I was coming out, I passed one of our neighbouring farmers who farms in a different way to us, not regenerative, and he was tipping on the same heap, and like, to be honest, it just really annoyed me, and I thought, like, my product is so different, no other business in the world would accept being sold in the same way. I need to find a way to change that.
Yeah. And when you say it's different, this is different. We'll come into what regenerative farming is, but so although it's different from how you look after the land, is the end result different as well? Is it going to be a more nutritious, better for you product that really therefore should attract a premium? Yeah.
So there's still a lot of research in that area, but it is seen that the healthier the soil, the healthier the product and the produce that comes off it. So yeah, we would grow healthy, like more nutrient dense food, because our soils are healthier. But quantifying that is a challenge.
Okay, and currently, unless you turn it into an end product, there isn't a market for premium commodity product basically.
No, we are just commodity. Yeah, right. There's no market.
That's
there needs to be one.
So your motivation then for being regenerative, or not yours so much, granddad's and your dad's, wasn't a financial thing from a sale perspective. What is regenerative farming, and what made them make the decision to farm that way?
Yeah, so if we go back kind of before we did regenerative, we was farming very much the same as everybody else you can imagine, and everybody else you probably drive past in the countryside. We can all think of a farmer with a really big plough and a really big tractor, and they turn the soil over, and you leave it fallow over the winter when you plant your crop in the spring, and or you might plant your crop in the winter, and then you got to spread a lot of chemicals, a lot of fertilizers to be able to get that plant to grow, because it's because the soil is so damaged and so lost in biology. So basically what was happening kind of 11 years ago is Dad and Granddad were having to buy bigger and bigger tractors, and getting less and less results, and everything was going in the wrong direction, and we was at the point where our machinery was pretty old and we needed to invest, And we was either going to have to invest and buy bigger tractors, which was, quite an eye-watering sum of money, or, there was this new thing that was called regenerative farming that not many people had tried, and Grandad and Dad kind of, was very crazy, I suppose, at the time, and thought, like, let's just go for it. Sold every big machinery we had, bought a drill, which is necessary for regenerative, and that was it. We was doing it whether people liked it or not. Quite a few of our neighbouring farmers think we're crazy, still think we're crazy. But yeah, they was committed, and that was the end of the story, really. But yeah, so since then we've, I wouldn't say we're regenerative yet. Like, we're still on the journey. I don't think you ever achieve it. It's just it's a process, and 12 years on, we still don't have all the answers.
Yeah. So the actual, what does it mean? How do you define regenerative then? Is there a definition, I suppose, for what qualifies?
Yeah. So no is a short answer. It's a super hard question because it just depends massively, like, on each farm's situation. So what works here might not work somewhere else, but it doesn't mean they're doing the wrong thing. But there's kind of a few key principles which we would say we all follow. The first one is minimum soil disturbance. So we basically just want to do as little to the soil as we possibly can. It needs to be left in the state it's in. And that is to allow all the fungus, all the bugs, all the biology to survive. Because if we disturb that soil, we're breaking down their house essentially. And they can't live. So, if we can leave that soil untouched, we can leave the root matter in place and they survive. The second kind of point is maximum soil cover. So if you think about in nature never allows bare soil. A weed, a stinger nettle, whatever it is, or will grow, wherever it is. So that, it is unnatural to see bare soil. And that's been a very traditional thing of agriculture, which really needs to change. So yeah, there's lots of kind of ways to do that, but the point is just keep something growing in the soil as much as possible, because we are in the business of harvesting sunlight, and if we haven't got a plant there, then we're not harvesting anything. Then the next point, the last point really, is kind of all the other stuff. Use as little fertilizers as possible. Add as much natural organic materials, manures, poultry manures, horse manures, whatever, to try and build that soil biology back up.
Okay. How does this fit in with the organic accreditation? Do they complement each other at all, or are they completely separate?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. So we were both like on the same lines of, we are using we want to look after our soils. So obviously organic, doesn't use any sort of chemicals. Regenerative would still use chemicals, because we believe organic has lower yields and the cost premium prohibits it from some people. But we can produce really high nutritiously dense food in an environmentally friendly way at, market prices. And that's the kind of important bit. But having said that, on a regenerative farm with our soil biology, we use absolutely as minimum as chemical as absolutely possible. We use a huge amount of biology, and, the chemical we do use is a lot of the chemical we do use is organic approved chemicals. So yeah, basically, we do use chemicals, but it's as little as we can possibly do, essentially.
Yeah. Okay, and you're right. So to get organic accreditation, then you can get a premium, but not with the sort of stuff you're growing, I suppose.
The problem we find with organic is to control the weeds, because you haven't got chemicals. You must disturb the soil, which usually means plough or do some sort of soil disturbance to destroy the weeds to be able to grow your crop of wheat or whatever. But obviously we want to put carbon in the soil. We want to put organic matter in the soil. And as soon as you disturb that soil, you release the carbon. So there is a bit of a conflict there, that people get the very hype that organic is such a good thing and really good for the environment. It is, but it is releasing carbon when you're ploughing, and it's not the answer. The holy grail is organic, no soil disturbance. Right. Nobody's got there yet, but we've got some people working on it.
It's interesting. I just I go on these journeys, and I end up sympathising with the average consumer. I always give this analogy that if I get on a plane, I expect the pilot to know about how to fly the plane, and as the customer sat out the back, I don't really need to know much about it. And as a restaurateur, I feel that my job is to understand where food comes from and where drink comes from, and really what the environmental impacts are. Because your average person just can't go far enough down that rabbit hole, I suppose, to go, do I buy organic? And now not only should, is that the answer, or is it regenerative and all this kind of stuff? Yeah, you mentioned about bare soil and not leaving soil bare. Is that because, we see these issues around soil, I suppose, being washed into rivers and all that kind of stuff? Or is this about the carbon capture element, I suppose, that we're going to get onto? Or what's the biggest reason for not leaving soil bare, I suppose?
Yeah, it's a combination of all of those things. Basically, the point is, like I said, we are in the business of, using photosynthesis to improve the soil or produce a product, or basically to grow biomass, right? And if we've, it's like a factory shutting down half the year if you've not got a plant growing there. We want something growing there because we're still going to be in production in some form. We grow a lot of things called cover crops here, which are plants that grow over winter, that we don't harvest. They just degrade back into the soil and essentially add carbon and organic matter back into the soil. And that means that the following crop, we don't have to spread as much artificial fertilizers and chemicals. So we use that plant to make the next plant better. So we need that plant there, and it's an important part of our rotation.
So why doesn't your intensive farmer do that anyway? Because that feels like a bit of a win-win. The soil sat there empty in the winter. Why would they not put? Is it because it's eating the fertilizer they're putting on the land and wasting it? Is it? Or
yeah. So there's a lot of misconceptions. A lot of people think it's like damaging and doing the wrong thing, and there is the thing of farmers like their fields to look tidy. Right. We can see some out the window. Actually, some herbal ley, it's a massive mix of clovers, and it's amazing for the soil. It looks weedy. Right. It's not, but it looks weedy, and farmers don't like that like perspective when they're driving past it. That is a big factor, which is a bit,
That feels crazy. Like it's all like imagine vacuuming your field kind of thing, isn't it? It's just nature. So okay, so you've been doing this 12 years here. What differences have you noticed then? Between now and then, I suppose, from how the land reacts, either what it looks like or how the soil is. What's different? Yeah,
massively. So we can go and have a look at it in a minute. But if you go and if you dig a hole, you break open the soil and you can just see the roots and the worms and the bugs and the insects doing stuff, being alive, creating soil biology, creating fungus, eating all the bad insects that it might eat my crop, and just making life essentially. And you can dig up a field that's been ploughed. Anybody can go and do it, and it's just dead. That's the best way to describe it. You won't be able to find much in it. There's not many worms. It's just like a lump of mud.
Have you got both within walking distance of here? Or
we probably do. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll definitely look at yours. We'll get out there and dig a hole. Jasper's heard about it. He's gone off. It's already my dog. He's literally just taken himself for a walk. He heard the word herbal ley, and that was it. He's gone off to eat some. So there clearly must be. You talk of this exceptionally positively and very passionate, but like you said, local farmers think you're crazy. There must be some key downsides. Is there? What are the downsides that other people at least perceive, and are they genuine?
The bit that people perceive, which is genuine, is in the transition phase. So once you go from a conventional system into a regenerative system, there's usually, it depends on your soil type, but let's say kind of a 3-year in between when you can't use soil biology because it hasn't built up yet, and it takes a few years for your soil to come back alive, but also you can't use the kind of conventional soil disturbance methods to mitigate that. So there is this kind of in between bit when your crops generally do suffer, and that's kind of where we hope carbon payments can come in to be able to support farmers to kind of get over that gap and encourage them to actually kind of make the difference, I guess.
Amazing. All right. Well, we'll come to the carbon side of it. Is there a place for, where do animals and farming animals fit into regenerative farming? I hear sort of conflicting stuff, I suppose, around, obviously that a huge growth in the plant and sort of vegan movement and stuff like that, and we shouldn't be eating animals. And then you get farmers who say, it's really good for the soil to have the cows out there, and their footprints or whatever, churning it up, and then they're adding organic matter. Where does it fit into the movement?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's a very important part. So we around here, this area is very traditional, purely arable crop production, and that's kind of how farming industry has gone. We've gone inside of areas of the country specialise in dairy or beef or sheep, or around here it's arable. And that is a massive shame, because, that is not how nature intends life to be. It intends it to be diverse and mixed. So we need to move much more back towards mixed farming systems, where you have animals and you have cropland in the same system, and that's kind of where regenerative and cover cropping and all those things come in place. So we actually graze some of our crops over winter. We graze a lot of our cover crops over winter with sheep to do all those things, add organic matter, push all the hooves in the ground, churn, do all that good stuff. We're trying some kind of horse livery to trying to get more organic material on the land. So animals are massively important. It's just integrating them in the right way is tricky in areas that have traditionally not had animals.
Okay, why? Because of how you, I suppose, feed them and where you put them and all that kind of stuff. It's
just
the infrastructure.
Exactly. It's the infrastructure and knowledge. Like, there's not, you go to the kind of the west of the country, there's, everybody knows how to do sheep and everybody's got sheep. But around here, there's one person that's got some sheep, it's a lot harder to do.
Everyone look at him like he's nuts as well.
Yeah, but what it does need to happen is we just need to get more mix. Those sheep need to come over this side, and some crops need to be grown over that side, and we just need to become a much more diverse everywhere.
I'm having flashbacks to when I was interviewing a beekeeper, and he was the grass under the orchard, I think. Yeah, let the sheep in from the neighbouring farm to eat the grass under the trees, and then the orchard, attracts the bees, so he's making honey and crops, and it feels like we need to. I suppose it's getting away from that monoculture thing. So the key thing then, there's a couple of things. We're going to come into the carbon side, but if you just look at, I suppose, the other issues around overuse of food fertilizers, overuse of chemicals. What's the big picture of what's going on with our arable crops? What's the damage that's happening? What's the environmental impact? Why is this important? I suppose, apart from just the carbon side.
Yeah. So regenerative is much more than carbon. Water quality, biodiversity, massively improved. It's tricky because basically what's happened in kind of the wider industry is we've been asked to compete on a global market, a global commodity market, with countries like Russia, Australia, America, where they have huge farms, you can't sizes of whole countries, and they can just produce wheat and crops that in a scale and at a price that we can't even conceive, and we've been asked to compete with that, which means we've had to do whatever we can to try and improve our yields, and to keep pushing the yields up. And then we've also been sold by, big chemical companies, great products that improve our yields and keep pushing it up. But, in recent decades, we've come to a point where all of that growth in yields has just plateaued. And, we spend more and, farmers spend more and more money on chemicals and, products that, are sold to improve what we're doing. And they just don't have the impact that they used to. And the more and more awareness in the industry and wider sector for environmental good just means we need to look at things in a different way, and we need to start not focusing everything on yields and think about kind of the wider impact and the resilience of our businesses to climate change and that kind of thing.
So what will happen if we don't make this change?
Well, the UN estimates there's only 60 harvests left in the world if we keep farming conventionally, which is a pretty crazy thought. We might run out of food in 60 years. That's not very long in people's lifetimes. I might still be there.
Yeah, you're knackered, Thomas. Yeah.
But it is a serious thing, and soil degradation globally, people will go hungry if we don't kind of sort out the soil situation, because it is the ecosystem that supports pretty much everything that we know, all life. Even the petrol in your car, it was once a kind of an animal that grew or ate something that came from the soil. So everything comes from soil, and it's just been abused and neglected for so many years. It needs to be kind of come back to the holy grail it is, I guess, and looked after in the right way.
So we're just using it as literally a carrier. So whereas once it was full of nutrition in its own sort of regard, I suppose, and that could feed the plants combined with the sun, obviously, now we just use it as a carrier predominantly for artificial chemicals and fertilizers. Where do we get these? What are these artificial fertilizers made of?
That's a good question. So yeah, exactly. It's a very good point. And what we normally say to people is, in a kind of degraded soil system, if when your soil's dead, you are just running a hydroponic system where everything that plant needs to keep alive, you're manually adding and manually having to do, which costs money, takes time, affects the environment, all those kind of bad things. So what we do is, like, why can't we just use, there's loads of nitrogen in the air, there's loads of like good chemicals and minerals in the ground. Let's kind of get that biology to work to release it in a form that the plant can take up, and then I don't have to sit on my tractor all day. And we've got more, the water quality that comes off our farm improve, the biodiversity and all that kind of thing. Fertilizer production, artificial fertilizer production is kind of one of the largest kind of impacts in terms of kind of emissions in agriculture. It is tricky because if people want crops, people want food at a cheap price, we need to use artificial fertilizer to be able to produce that. We've massively reduced our artificial fertilizer, but we still have to use a bit to compete, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So I suppose, if you're aware of this and there's lots more evidence now and you're part of this movement, why it still feels like pretty slow progress? Like there's not many yous or your dad and your granddad. Farmers they're not evil, right? So they're not sort of out there going, oh, let's screw up the planet. No. Why is it taking so long? Is this sort of willful neglect? Is it ignorance? Is it an education piece? What's the reason why we can't get a bit more momentum? So
there's definitely a lot of farmers, and it really massively, I've seen so much crazy uptake in the last, say, even 2-3 years of interest from farmers. But farmers are starting to change. The issue, I guess, with agriculture is it is a very slow industry, and that's not anybody's fault. That's just because it takes a year to grow a crop. So one change you make takes a year, and then it takes a couple of years to make any effect. But yeah, the movement is growing massively, and it will continue to grow, especially as kind of the government starts to fund more environmental stuff on farms. I think from what I understand, it is kind of it's the older generation thing of, like, the older generation is like, this is how we've always done it. It's always worked in the past. We'll just carry on doing it like that. And, the younger generation like me are sort of starting to come along and say, like, you sure this is right? Like, maybe we can do this in a better way. And think of new ideas, I guess.
Okay, so thinking of new ideas was a perfect segue, because you've set up Gentle Farming. You won an award for setting it up, digging for innovation, and I love this very specific challenge that was posed. So the question: can productivity and biodiversity coexist? And all sorts of people applied, and you won. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what was the answer then? Can productivity and biodiversity coexist? What did you say? What did you set up?
Yes, I think yes, it can. And yeah, like, I guess the thing is, like, we're proving it here. Like, we've got huge amounts of biodiversity on our farm. And yeah, we're still producing a product to sell. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have a house. So, yeah, it is possible. But it needs to be done in the right way, I guess.
Okay. So what's Gentle Farming?
So from the way we farm, and improving our soil biology and all that kind of thing, I knew that we was adding carbon into the soil, and that carbon is coming from the atmosphere. So we are taking atmospheric carbon, putting it in the soil, and storing it. And I knew we was doing this, and I wanted to find a way to quantify it, because I knew, all the big airlines, the big tech companies were saying they wanted to buy carbon offsets. So I was like, oh, maybe I've got a product here. So I've spent the last year try to find a way to do it. I was bored in the first lockdown, and I kind of set myself the challenge to see if I could do it, which was a bit naive, I suppose, at the time. But yeah, and I spent the last year trying every way you can possibly find, learning a lot, making lots of mistakes. But now in the past sort of 3 or 4 months, we've got a system that works. We're going to produce our first carbon certificates in the autumn. We're signing up farmers kind of nationwide at the moment. And yeah, like this is a really proof of concept year. It's a really new thing. But yeah, no, we don't really know, nobody knows things till they push the boundaries and try things. And yeah, this time next year, we'll have, done a cycle, and we'll be pushing to get more and more farmers on board.
Yeah, interesting. And what's the, I suppose there's multiple objectives, but is the key objective to find a way to help farmers make that transition from intensive farming to regenerative farming? Is that your key focus?
Yeah, we need to incentivize more farmers to make that transition, and we need to reward and encourage the farmers that already have made that transition to keep doing things in a better and better way, because those pioneering farmers will keep pushing the boundaries into other ideas that probably we can't even think of. And then we need to get the farmers that, haven't even started looking at it yet to, incentivize to start doing something.
Okay. So how are you actually doing? You've got a farmer, and he wants to make this transition, but realizes it's going to take somewhere between 3 and 5 years, and that's going to hurt financially. You rock up and say, hey, look, we can prove how much carbon you're getting out of the atmosphere now, how much you will get out in 3 or 5 years' time. Yeah. And in essence, you can then come up with these carbon certificates that you sell to companies that helps subsidize the farmer. Is that in a nutshell how it works?
Yeah, in a nutshell. Yeah, exactly. And for farmers that kind of, are less on this journey, or, new to the journey or whatever, we offer completely free training to farm agronomists to understand, how regenerative works and understand our system, and to help their farmers come onto the system.
Okay.
Do you want me to explain what agronomist?
Yeah. So, you saw my face.
Yeah, I could see your face. So an agronomist is, the best way to describe it is like a vet, but for arable crop production. So it's a vet for your plants. That's essentially what it is. They'll come round and advise the farmer on what should we do with this plant, what should we grow, how should we grow it, all that kind of thing. What diseases are we getting, all of that. And they're the people that help make decisions on farms, and they're very trusted by farmers. So that's kind of why we've offered them the free training to understand the system really, and how it can benefit farmers to become more regenerative.
And they would normally learn, what they called again?
Agronomists.
Agronomists. They would normally learn how to be an agronomist.
Yeah.
At sort of, I don't know, college or whatever. Do they? It's a course that you follow. Is regenerative farming part of that or not?
No. So that's the other problem is a lot of these agronomists are very traditional, and again probably of the older generation, and went to school when ploughing and all of that things were taught at agricultural colleges. And so that, obviously some are really experts in regenerative, absolutely. And we've got one here that's kind of a regen ag specialist. But, there's a lot of agronomists that, are skeptical, don't understand it, want some more knowledge. And yeah, that's kind of why we got the training there.
Okay, so in my world, this probably reminds me of chefs, I guess, and wanting chefs to use sustainable produce, but finding out that actually at college, they're not really taught about the sustainability of, where your fish is from and how it's caught. They're taught about how to make a fish taste amazing and how to cook it, but maybe less so on the environmental side. But I guess that's changing. It's interesting, I suppose, isn't it? Who's pushing for the change? I wouldn't be surprised if it's the students saying, hang on, you're missing this, we want to learn it, rather than the teachers necessarily wanting to teach it. How can you afford to offer free training? Where do you get the cash for that?
Yeah, so that's obviously part of the scheme. So that's, when we sell a certificate, we take a margin to cover all the costs, and it's part of that.
Okay. What's this commodity carbon? Who are they?
Yeah, so it's basically the soil carbon certification system that we use. They're a Danish kind of agri-tech company. They do like online grain trading. They've been doing that in Eastern Europe, quite big for quite a few years. But in the last year, they developed this soil carbon system, soil carbon certification system. And I suppose I came to them at a point where I knew lots of farmers, and I'd spent a year talking to lots of buyers who wanted to buy some carbon. but I just couldn't find a system in the middle. And that's what I spent the year trying to find. And I tried lots of systems out, and this is the only system that as a farmer I could actually use, made sense, delivered me what I wanted to. So yeah, I formed a partnership with them, and we basically spent the first part of this year translating, adapting their system to fit a UK farm with all its little quirks. And yeah, now we're kind of up and running and operating, I guess.
Okay, so this is really about giving people confidence, an accreditation process to say, if you want to buy a certificate, we can absolutely demonstrate impact. But if you're a farmer, here's here's a process, here's an accredited process you step through. What sort of things then will the farmer be needing to do? What would they change to qualify for this, I guess?
So obviously it depends completely on their farming practices, and I like the system because it incentivizes you to do better. So you basically you go on the system, you input all the information about your field, what you've done this year, what you did last year, and we can calculate the carbon from that. But what it means is, if you go on the system, and my dad will use it now, is he'll try and just manage and plan what he's going to do kind of based on the carbon. So what it means is he practically makes changes on the ground because he goes on the system and decides whether to plant a cover crop, what crop to plant this year, how much diesel to use, all that kind of thing, based on the amount of carbon credits he's going to lose, essentially. So that it's going to cost him some loss in carbon credits, and is that benefited by whatever he's got to do to achieve that. So, but what that really means is he makes really active changes on the ground that actually make a difference in real life, essentially.
Okay, amazing. And then most people, when they think about carbon credits and they think about these kind of schemes, I suppose they think trees, don't they? You kind of have this impression that, and I'm always a little bit cynical. I'm sure some of them are amazing, but I always worry a little bit that people just think, look, I can buy a credit and carry on, I don't know, fly into Monaco every weekend and drive around in a great big Sunseeker or whatever your boat might be, or that on the other side of it might be that you go to some guy and say, hey, you've got a forest, were you ever going to cut it down? And they say no, and they're like, great, can I use it to get some carbon credits? And I don't know how these things work. So I love the idea that this is much more transparent and that it's accredited. But why even in the news, I think over the last couple of weeks, the government have been talking about how many trees they're going to plant. Why do people think that trees are the best thing, and are they not? Why is farming better?
Yeah, so trees are, like you say, like when you think of a carbon offset, everybody thinks let's plant some trees, which is a shame. But that really is because it's just because that's what's been accepted, and I guess that's kind of the old way of doing it. Trees is we've got a system, it works, we all abide by it, it's all good. Soil carbon's a much more new, innovative, pioneering thing, and we're right at the start of that market, and I expect it to grow massively in the next kind of 5 years or so. And I guess that's kind of the only reason that soil carbon isn't there yet, is it's just so new and so pioneering. But the exciting thing for me is, you plant a tree, it takes 15, 20 years to grow and do what you paid it to do. But because we're actively doing things, we do it in the soil in a year, in a crop year. We can do what a tree does over 20 years. We can do it in 1 year. And that's the exciting bit, because we can make a difference so much quicker.
Yeah, sounds incredible. How much land, you look at a tree, I don't know what sort of trees we plant. I guess we're not planting oak trees and stuff. I guess it's mixed. But and let's say it takes 20, 30 years to get to a certain size. Has anybody done the calculation to show, okay, how much land do you need to be farming to suck out the same amount of carbon as a tree?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on the carbon tons per tree. I think it depends on the tree.
Why not,
probably.
Thomas? What's the matter with you? What have you been doing all morning?
Well, all I can tell you is what soil carbon can do. So soil carbon can do, on average, it obviously depends so much on each farm, but on average, about 2 to 3 tons of carbon into the soil per hectare per year.
Wow, that sounds like a lot.
Yeah, so just to kind of put that in context, I guess, so we farm about 800 hectares. So yeah, we'll be sucking in kind of 1,500, 2,000 tons of carbon a year into our soils. And the important thing is, we do it in a year. like we actually do it in a year.
Yeah, and then you do it the next year.
Yeah, we do
and
it
the next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then I can't remember. You've got some amazing videos on the Gentle Farming website that really kind of highlight, I suppose, the issue around soy, but also this opportunity. Because I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like, if all of the farms shifted to regenerative farming, it would suck out, enough carbon from the planet in something like 5 years or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
We've got all these grand schemes at the moment, 50 years to do this, 50 years to do that. But it could be done in 5. And they were recognising that, okay, not everybody's going to change their mind straight away, so it won't take 5. But actually, with some sort of fairly intensive education, you could do it in 15. It feels like a bigger opportunity than anything else that we're doing at the moment. Is that right? Have I remembered that correctly?
Yeah. So that's where the figures are. Like, I can't quite remember, but it's something like if every hectare in the world improves its organic matter by like a tiny amount, it's like 0.1%, then we get our carbon back to pre-industrial levels. It's something like that, which, all these kind of big numbers always seem a bit crazy and unrealistic, and it does your head in a bit. That's kind of why I'm I guess I don't really keep an eye on that big picture. Like, just want to make difference to single farms on the actual ground that people can drive past and see the difference, because that's what makes the difference in real life.
Okay. How many hectares did you say you farm?
800-ish.
800 hectares.
Yeah.
So is that a big farm or medium?
Yeah, large-ish, medium large.
Okay. And so your average farmer, he's got some land. He recognises he needs to go on this 3 or 5 year transition. You're trying to help because you're giving him the education, but you're also trying to provide the financial incentive.
Yeah.
Is it enough? How much money can you sell a certificate for? And is a certificate, presumably either you pay, I don't know if it's numbers of certificates, or you pay for a bigger certificate because you're getting more carbon out. But realistically, is it enough money to help the farmers on this transition? Is this potentially quite significant?
Yeah, so the crucial bit about this is, I don't know, like how many people are aware, but we used to get funding from the EU to farm, essentially, as a subsidy. And now, we've decided we want to leave the EU. We won't get into that debate, but what that means is that we are losing that funding, and the government are saying that they want to replace that funding with environmental projects. We don't know what they're going to look like, and we don't expect them to come out for sort of 4 or 5 years, which is a long time, and farmers have got quite a big gap in between losing funding and getting new funding that we don't know what it is yet, that might shortfall, and it might cause a lot of farms to go out of business. So kind of I hope we can cover a bit of that gap, and the incentive that we can give, like it depends on each farm, but it's going to go some of the way to kind of replacing that subsidy that we used to get from the EU, and it's going to be doing a good thing, like incentivizing farmers to go in the right direction.
Would it go, when you say it will go some of the way, like 10%, 50%?
50% at least.
50%, yeah? Okay, so it's a good old chunk.
Yeah. Nice.
So then you need to find people who want to buy these carbon credits. In essence, at the moment, most people presumably are going, I don't know if there's if they're a middleman in carbon credit world. You're going to be selling this directly to, I don't know, the guy who's just bought himself a new Porsche, or are you selling this to, big companies? Yeah, where do you take this?
Yeah, so I mean, this is our first year, and this year we're not going to have a huge amount, so it's not going to be too difficult. It is going to become interesting in other years. There's a lot of kind of carbon traders and carbon markets and all that kind of thing, and how do we, don't get caught in the middleman thing that we all do in crop production. We want to kind of go direct, and I guess that's what I aim to do, is go much more direct. And yeah, I mean, it is easier dealing with kind of companies that want to buy a decent amount of credits at a time. But we're hoping to work with quite a few of these. There's a lot of these apps about that do kind of carbon offsetting to be able to sell it to kind of individuals as well.
Is there?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And at the moment, because presumably you've researched this, sorry if I'm going into areas that you're not an expert in, but at the moment, are most of these certificates you can buy carbon offsets, are these generally overseas? You hear about Amazon projects and all this kind of stuff. Are there many in the UK, or is this a pretty global thing?
No, so pretty much. I mean, there's a few woodland projects in the UK, but kind of 90% of carbon credits are far from developing countries. So the Amazon and stuff like that. It's tricky. like, do you really want to be sending your money the other side of the world to something that is very hard to kind of keep the accountability on and actually see if it actually happened? Or you can spend it, we want to be able to facilitate people to pick a farm and invest in the one that's, 10 miles up the road, or the one they drive past to go to work, or whatever. And, you can keep it, you can see what's happening. You can see, what your good's doing, I guess.
Yeah. Sounds amazing. I think it's such an awesome concept. So let's say, somebody invests in their local farm, they feel like they're helping them on this transitionary journey. Once you've been on that transition, how does the farmer work out, sort of ongoing credits? Because I imagine the biggest change is year 1 to year 5, and you've made a huge difference. Is it then going to be sort of on a continual basis to say, okay, well, this is where you were 5 years ago, so as long as you continue this way? Or actually does it end up that they don't need to support them because actually the yield's up, they've gone through the transition, and then you move on to the next farm? Is the best thing if you do yourself out of business and everybody's farming regeneratively, you don't need it anymore?
I mean, the best thing, everybody's farming regeneratively, and all the businesses are carbon neutral, and the carbon market doesn't exist. I guess that's the ultimate aim for everybody.
Before you die, you've got 60, 70 years, Thomas, to pull it off.
But there's quite a long transition in between that, between now and then, definitely. But like farms, soil keeps doing this every year. To what extent, maybe 20, 30 years of regen, it's going to slightly decrease. But what we've seen is the first 20 years are pretty consistently, this is what it does, essentially.
Okay. And so what's the response been then? Because this is an innovative idea, particularly, I suppose, like you say, even the fact of understanding how much carbon soil is sucking out of the atmosphere is fairly new, but actually coming up with a way of measuring that and putting in a system. Are you the only person doing that in the UK? And what's the response been to people you're chatting to?
So it's interesting, like, within agriculture, like, everybody is talking about it. Everybody's talking about soil carbon. It's the new opportunity. It's going to save the industry, all that kind of thing. There's not many people actually doing something. I don't actually know of a system in the UK that's up and running this year. There's kind of talks of systems coming in the next, few years. But hopefully we'll get up and running faster. There's some systems that work in North America. I think there's one in Australia. But it is a very kind of new area. And kind of in terms, I mean, farmers are, I guess, understandably kind of nervous of a new market and the kind of, how's it going to work and all that kind of thing. And the farmers we've got now are definitely kind of the most pioneering, risk-taking, if you want to call it that, innovative farmers. And kind of once we've run through a year, like, we'll have got some case studies of what happened, and we'll have kind of, proof concept and paid farmers and all that kind of stuff. And then I expect kind of this time next year to snowball pretty rapidly as people start to see, it's kind of, at this stage it is like proof of concept year, and next stage is like we've done it now, like this is how it works, come and join us kind of thing.
Feels like you're in beta from a tech perspective.
Yes.
And have you got farmers then that are doing it? Is this now started?
So we've got 35-ish farmers signed up kind of all across the country. We're aiming for 50 this year, but in that region,
Okay. And they've all, so you've got this measurable, what was it called? Commodity carbon.
Yeah.
Commodity carbon, there you go. Agronomist and commodity carbon. I never normally struggle to talk too much. So you've got that system in place. And have you also got people who have fundamentally bought the credits ready for investment? Has anybody invested in this yet? Have government invested? Have you had any support yet?
No, so I've sold 200 tons of credits off our farm just to kind of, I guess, prove to myself I could do it. Okay.
But you have sold. You had the money yet?
Yeah,
Excellent.
It's done.
Amazing. Who to? Like lots of people, or did you go to a middleman?
It's a big company, but it's a waste management company, really.
Okay.
So
I didn't need I wasn't asking for name and number, but that's good. That's good that there's the market out there.
Done.
So that's good. Excellent.
But then, like this kind of last few months, we've been massively focusing on farmers and getting the system right, and all that kind of thing, and getting them on the system. I had a few weeks like really talking to buyers and kind of gauging interest, and it was to be honest quite overwhelming. Everybody's interested, everybody wants to talk about it, everybody wants to buy carbon credits, it seems like, and it, all the predictions are the carbon credit market's only going to increase. But like at the minute we're focused on farmers, and then kind of after harvest, mid-harvest, we'll start focusing more on buyers, I guess.
Okay. Who decides how much a carbon credit sells for? Is there is it like a commodity? Is there a price for a carbon credit?
Well, this is the interesting thing. Like, there is commodity prices, but I think they're commodity prices just the same as it's a commodity wheat, right? It's determined by massive carbon projects in Brazil that trade really, really cheap and all that kind of thing. Like, I personally believe that we've got a premium carbon product that does biodiversity, it does water quality, it's local, you can buy some produce, you can see some farms, come and visit one of the farms. Do you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff is going to improve the price and it give more incentive to farmers to make the difference quicker. So in terms of like what price, at the minute it's super hard. Like, we haven't really kind of decided, I guess. But we're the kind of thing that I would like to say is like we want to be at the premium end of the carbon market, and our kind of plan is to have kind of a marketplace of farmers. So every farm gets their own like profile and pictures and story of their farm and all that kind of thing. So a buyer can come on and browse all the farms and see where they all are in the country and pick one that they're really interested in, or produces something that they are interested in, or local or near their mum and dad's house, whatever it is. Yeah. To buy from, okay. Which I hope can achieve a premium.
And is what are they measured in credits for? Is this per ton?
Yeah, so it's literally 1 credit is 1 ton of carbon stored.
Okay, so you can go and basically say, and I guess specialists, if it's a company thing, can come in and say, right, your company's burning whatever it is, 20 tons of carbon a year, so to offset it, go and buy 20 carbon credits.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's lots of these kind of carbon calculators about, and there's a lot of companies that kind of specialize in carbon calculations.
Amazing. I love it. I think it's awesome, just the visibility and credibility of being able to do it on a local level, and then the fact that it's supporting British farmers, and it's ultimately, like you say, soil is everything we eat comes from the soil. It's got a benefit on public health and nutrition and water quality. There just seems like an insane amount of plus sides. I can't believe that you're being interviewed by me. I feel like you should be being interviewed by BBC News or Rishi, and he should be giving you a load of money to get this off the ground. But it's not. My family thought I was quite sad when I got tragically excited. But soil almost became cool when Netflix put out that Kiss the Ground movie. You're clearly passionate about soil. Are you pleased, I suppose, with the trajectory of public opinion, and do you think that we might be on the cusp, I suppose, of a bit more understanding and actually a huge growth in this areas? And do things like those sort of documentaries, do they help, do you think?
I thought Kiss the Ground was so good, and all of the people I've spoke to, I guess, in the last year are all like, oh yeah, I've seen a film about that, and it just creates that bit of awareness that wasn't there before, I think. I'm really supportive of those documentaries, and like there seems to be a lot more kind of media news and attention about soil. I guess I'm a bit biased because I keep an eye on that kind of area, but kind of that's what I've seen. And there definitely is becoming more awareness, and I do think you're right. Like, we are at the start of people starting to understand it a bit more, but soil is such a complex thing, and soil scientists will admit, like, we don't know much about soil. It's a super complex, like, biology and mix of chemistry and physics, and we're only at the start of the understanding, I guess.
Yeah, I was trying to read that stat. I was looking in my notes here about how many microorganisms are in like a teaspoon of
it's
soil.
something like 100 billion microorganisms in a handful of soil, or there's something like that. It's so
utterly mind blown. It feels like the ocean that we don't really know. We go down to a certain level, and I suppose that's one of the things that confuses me a little bit. And I'm sorry if you don't know the answer, but do we know how far soil goes down? Is like soil just the top bit? Because I kind of think, like, okay, even if you're bashing the crap out of the top bit of soil, does it go down 30 meters, or is soil literally just the first sort of six inches? Because you'd like to think if you go down far enough that the organisms and all the cool shit's going on, even if you are doing some bad stuff to the top. But does that make sense?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and it is probably a misconception. First, how deep is soil? Like, I'm going to say again, absolutely depends where you are. Some places I know in the country are like this much soil, and then you get to a rock. And around here it's pretty deep.
For people listening and not watching the video, that was about 2 inches in your hand. So not very deep.
And then like round here you can kind of do 2 meters. It's still kind of clay soil and stuff. So it depends. The thing is, like, soil, active soil that does stuff, does biology, does improving carbon, all that stuff, only happens in the top bit. In the technical terms.
Now you're talking my language.
Yeah, exactly.
The top bit.
It only happens in the top bit, because once you get lower, oxygen gets depleted from the soil. Like, like the weight of the soil means there's not much oxygen down there.
Right.
And the water table, around here is, sort of covers it, makes it underwater, and basically the pressure kind of means that there's not much active stuff going on. So we've got to do something. The bit that we can control, and the bit we can control is the top bit, and that's the bit that does the work. So that's the bit we've got to do something about. There is kind of loads of science showing that, if you improve the top bit, that good stuff moves down, and you can start to kind of influence deeper.
Right.
But there needs to be more research in that.
Okay, excellent. We're going to go and dig a hole in a minute. Let's go down. What should we go down? 3 or 4 meters and see if there's anything still living?
Got a digger out there. We can go.
Have
really
you?
deep. Yeah.
Oh, come on. You've got toys. Who is against this? I hear, and you'll know much better than me, but, in these conversations I've had with other farmers, I suppose, and the things that I learn about, buying seeds, and those seeds already pretty much come wrapped in some sort of chemical and fertilizer. And there's actually 4 or 5, big companies that seem to control all of this, and the same people selling the seeds are the same people that are selling the chemicals and the fertilizers. And it feels like some sort of huge monopoly. Are they fundamentally, and I guess I'll use the analogy of, looking at people like Shell, and don't sue me anybody, all right? This is just a chat. But if you look at the big oil companies, you can't help but be cynical and go, okay, you come out with all of this green stuff now to say, look, we're going to invest in the future, and we're investing in wind and all this other tech, and can't help but be super cynical. But then also go, well, okay, like, surely if you were the CEO of those companies, you'd recognise that if you're using a finite resource, you absolutely should be investing in the next tech to come along. Otherwise, you won't long-term have a company anymore. You'd like to think that the big companies that invest in all of this recognise that we need to take this transition, but can't help but feel that they'll be having much more short-term shareholder conversations where they're massively incentivised to screw up the soil as much as possible and fill it full of artificial shit. What's your kind of experience? Again, don't sue Thomas either, but what's your experience of the big companies that are behind British agriculture? Where are they at in this?
But there is a big problem in that, and you're right. Like, there's a few companies that buy all the grain, sell all the chemicals, and control the system. We use a lot less chemicals here. We use a lot less fertilizers. They don't benefit from using our system. Also, the other thing that is good to think of is we use massively smaller tractors, massively less horsepower. So we just don't buy many tractors. We don't need many tractors, and the tractors we do buy are the cheap tractors because we don't need big tractors. So kind of powerful industry is all focused on high intensive, high yielding production systems, and ours is very not that. So there's a conflict, definitely. It's kind of the same as Shell and stuff. Like, all they talk about is we want to support sustainable farming and stuff. But yeah, how does it affect their shareholders?
So are they at least saying that they're interested in
Oh
it?
yeah, like
They are.
definitely. Yeah. I've had conversations with quite a few of them. They can see it's coming, and I think they can see it's coming, and it's going to come whether they like it or not. So they've got to be playing the game.
Yeah, well, it feels like a lot of these things now, because of the likes of these sort of Netflix documentaries, that, whereas before we relied on government giving us information, now we don't. Now there's independent reporters who can go out there, and whereas before, those independent reporters couldn't afford to put an ad in in one of the massive newspapers. Now they can record a video on their iPhone and stick it out in the world, and we get to hear. So I do think there's an interesting education piece. There's clearly a misinformation piece going on as well, but it feels like it doesn't just need to come from government. But what's the government response? Again, you presumably read stuff. Are they aware of this and doing anything about it? Aware of it and not doing anything about it, or not aware of it?
Yeah, so the government are in a bit of decision time, I guess, at the minute, where we've come out of the EU, we're losing that funding as farmers, and they've said we're going to get environmental funding for public goods, which is a bit of a woolly term, and we don't know any of the details yet, but they're supposed to be coming out in the next 4 or 5 years. But they are very aware of the soil carbon market, and how it's developing, and keeping an eye on it. And I hope that we can have some good constructive conversations as we go, and as we kind of prove concept, I guess. From my perspective, like, the UK government is not as big as the EU government funding budget was, and COVID has restricted a lot of money. Somebody spent a lot of money on vaccines, which is obviously a good thing, but what that means is, the agricultural DEFRA budget is being restricted. And if I can come to them with a solution that improves and does environmental good and all the things they want to do, and I can get the money from private funding and they don't have to pay anything, I think they're going to be quite happy with that.
Yeah, you'd like to think so, wouldn't you? It feels like a no-brainer. There's an argument, and I don't know again whether this is true, so interested in your perspective as a farmer, but I suppose the British government have very much been saying, look, when we're not controlled by European policy with regards to farming, we can have a much more environmental focus on the money and on the grants that are given out. We can be much more nimble, and actually trying to turn a ship as big as the EU is much harder, and certainly they're saying that they want to be investing in renewables and be one of the most environmentally conscious countries on the planet. Your experience of that, do you think, okay, there is an opportunity here because, I have only got to negotiate with the British government and not the European government, or are they greenwashing us?
We just don't know yet. Like, they've done this, they obviously come out of the EU, like we said, and they've said they want to do environmental payments. It is tricky because, like, we've still got to produce food, and we've got to produce good quality food, and we've still got to produce a lot of it. So there is conflict, and it's not an easy thing, and I don't envy the people that just have to decide at DEFRA. But yeah, they're definitely saying all the right things, and we've just got to wait and see kind of what comes actually out in real life, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, good. So key thing is, sounds like you've got a huge amount of momentum, that it's going pretty well, considering this was just a little idea that you had in the shower, in the first lockdown or whatever, and thought, where could this take me?
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. That's like a year's worth of work. You're clearly really knowledgeable on it, but more than knowledgeable on it, like the fact you've now got 35 farms that have started, you've got this accreditation system, you've started selling, hats off to you, congratulations. I think it's awesome. Are you is this your full-time thing now? Is your dad sobbing on his tractor going, Jam, where's Thomas? He's supposed to be out ploughing up a field. And how long do you think, before this becomes, I suppose, sustainable, not from an environmental perspective, but from a sort of a job and a business? And do you see yourself employing people and stuff? How's this going to play out?
Yeah, well, so Dad wouldn't be upset because I'm not ploughing a field because we're not ploughing.
Oh, yeah, of course you're not. Yeah. But, idiot. You're not out there walking with your...
Yeah, exactly. But no, this is... Yeah, like, this is a business. And obviously it's a business with a good ethos, but, it's a business. And I'm very much a believer in, the B Corp thing of business can be a good tool. And, yeah, it is... this is the first year, very much proof of concept, and it does take up pretty much all my time. Along into the evenings. But I kind of expect, hopefully, it's a new startup, we don't know, but hopefully kind of, I'll be able to have staff and stuff, and it'll grow as a business, essentially.
Amazing. All right, cool. So, can we go and dig a hole? Because I think it'd be pretty cool to, Can we take the... No, I don't need to take the digger. Take a dog. They can dig the holes. Yeah. But let's get out there. And what was it called? A herbal lay. Herbal lay. Yeah, we can have a look at herbal lay. We're going to go and have a look at a herbal lay. I've learned so many new words today. Let's get out there and have a look. Thanks. So, we've wandered up just, not too far, a couple of 100 metres maybe from your house. Where are we now, Thomas?
So we are in a herbal lay field that we spoke about. It's a new thing. We're supposed to get environmental payment from the government in the future, in theory, but we've planted this for our own experiment, really, and I suppose to see if we can do it without subsidy. We've fenced it, which we can see, and we've done that because we're going to graze it with horses, because we obviously the person that's going to graze the horses is going to pay some money, and then we kind of hope that the manures and the hoofs and grazing should improve the soil quality. And then this will be down for sort of, I think we're thinking sort of 3 to 5 years, and then when it comes out of that, the crop that it produces should be exceptional.
Okay. And why are the government interested in potentially, or DEFRA interested in giving you a grant for a field like this? What's their motivation? Why is it good?
Yeah, because it's so good for soil quality. So it's a herbal ley, which kind of means it's a mixture of a massive amount of things. Some say it looks weedy.
Never.
Probably does. But yeah, some of these things, obviously, the thistles are not meant to be in here. But a lot of the things, clovers, dock leaves, there's a few other phacelias, stuff like that, are supposed to be in here. And they all improve soil quality, and they all do different jobs. So clover takes nitrogen out of the air and puts it in the soil. And that means that the crop, the wheat crop or whatever we plant in after this, is really going to need almost no artificial fertilizers, and you know, and the nitrogen we get from the air is massively better than the nitrogen we can get from a bag. And then all the other plants do all different things, different root structures, deep roots, shallow roots. So
you've planted this with all this
we
stuff?
planted this about a year ago-ish.
From seed? Is this just scatter seed on it?
Yeah, in a technical way.
Am I oversimplifying?
Yeah,
that,
so
or?
Obviously we've got a drill, like a machine that we pull a tractor and we plant it.
Right.
And then we've mowed it a few times to basically to get it to kind of thicken up.
Yeah.
And now it's looking pretty good. We've had a harvest of silage off it, which is just the grass mulch, which, you know, sort of like what you get from your lawnmower, but we do it on a bigger scale, and that's gone into a anaerobic digester to make green energy, and now it's ready.
Okay.
We've just finished the fencing. Let's put some horses on it.
So how long? What was here before you planted it?
It was in crop. So
right.
I think it was wheat before this.
Right, but it was yours. It'd been done regeneratively for a while.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, but this is about almost like super boosting the soil. How long did you say before you would use this field for crops though? Quite a while.
Well, we don't really know how long it takes, but our aim is like 3-5 years, 3 to 5 years.
Quite a long time.
Yeah, you have to think long term.
Yeah, particularly if you were already farming this field in a regenerative way. Anyway, by the time you've done that, you're going to have like really pimped soil, basically. This is going to be your gold dust.
It should be, yeah.
Yeah, is that the test?
Yeah.
And then how will you know when you say it depends? You know, it takes as long as it takes. What do you do? You sort of constantly test the soil quality with your agronomist. Do you like the way I actually said agronomist there without having to stop and think about it? Thank you.
No, so it really. We'll basically take this out of production when it sort of starts to fade. So herbal ley plants are kind of, they have a bit of a lifetime. You know, the clover and that it'll be good for sort of 5 years or so, and then it'll start to kind of fade, and you know it's done its life.
Right.
And then it'll come back into crop production.
Okay, so thinking of that, your sort of yield perspective, the period of that sort of 3 to 5 years while you're pimping your soil.
Yeah.
You can monetize it by renting to a horse. Can you actually use the herbs for anything? You mentioned the silage. Is there any other way? Like, is this basically costing you money to have this field sat here on this experiment?
So, I mean, this is why it's an experiment, because we don't mind if it costs us money.
Yeah.
But we're obviously trying to find a way to make it pay. The horse thing is really good. Yeah. But it obviously relies on a person, and you know, whether you can find people and all that kind of thing. If the horsey lady keeps on there all the time, it'll pay
for itself.
Yeah,
and then you can just potentially move to it. How big is this field?
5 hectares. This is.
Is it?
Yeah.
How many acres is that?
12 acres.
Just testing.
Yeah. But this is experiment, and we plan to do all the way down this road, so that's 50 hectares ish.
Okay. Wow, that's cool, isn't it? Love it. All right.
That's the plan.
So even now, though, compared to digging in one of your neighbours' farms, for example, you're going to dig a hole, yeah? Sure.
Yeah, we could dig a hole.
You should basically find that it's...
It's going to be really hard to dig.
Yeah, well, at least we've had a little bit,
but the point is,
of rain.
Because the roots, it should be hard to dig because the root structure is so thick. Like it should be hard to break up.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that noise. You probably didn't hear the noise, but the noise of like the roots ripping.
Yeah.
That's the noise that we want to hear. Because it means there's stuff happening essentially.
Okay.
So the first thing we see really is the darkness of the soil. It's kind of a really dark chocolate colour.
Yeah, it is.
And that basically means there's lots of organic matter in the soil. Then the next thing we can see is all these roots. There's a massive amount. They're kind of oozing, for want of a better word, from the soil.
Word. If I was a herb, I'd be happy to live there. It looks pretty succulent.
There's a little worm there.
Yeah.
And the other thing is there's all these layers. Look, there's these layers like this.
Yeah, almost peels.
And it all breaks apart really easily.
Right.
Like crumbly.
Yeah.
And the other thing is we've had quite a lot of rain, and it's lovely. You know, you could drive in here. It's not too wet. It's not too squishy.
Yeah.
And that's because all of that root
Yeah, you're right. It's absolutely full of root.
Yeah.
Okay.
And but that's what you damage when you disturb it.
I'll take some photos in a second and pop them up on the notes that go with this episode. But yeah, so when I've walked, I was out on a walk a couple of months ago over in the Purbex, and it almost looked like wasteland. I guess it was just a bare soil, and it was so compacted and dry. It almost looked like there'd been some sort of nuclear explosion. So this is the opposite to that, basically. And you were saying that we had that really dry period in April, and you could tell the difference in your crop compared to your neighbouring fields' crops, just from a colour perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so when it was that really dry period, obviously our soil stores a lot more water, and neighbouring farms' kind of crops were starting to get a bit yellow and a bit kind of drought, showing the drought. And ours was sort of green as grass, still, happy motoring away, doing their job essentially.
Yeah, nice. Well, look, you hold that while I take a couple of photos. And then, so this year, really cold sort of start, I suppose. What difference does that make to what you do, and how long? Is there sort of an inevitability that you catch up at some point and it sorts itself out, sort of from experience of previous years, or is this a genuine problem when you have such a cold start to spring?
Yeah, late frosts. We had really late frosts, which was weird. Haven't really. Well, I'm fairly young, so I haven't really seen that before, but Grandad he's seen everything before.
Yeah, and even for him, is he saying that was really, because it did feel unusual?
It was very unusual. Yeah, well,
even
to
in
be
May,
fair,
we had frost.
Yeah, well, the last 2 years of dry spells, really, really wet spells have been, Grandad absolutely cannot remember it ever happening in his lifetime. Yeah. Genuinely, farmers on the ground are seeing the impacts of climate change, whatever you want to call it. It is making a difference to life and to the crops we produce and the food that people eat.
So is that, do you think, motivating people to sort of, say, is your granddad, I suppose he was one of the pioneers kind of doing this anyway, but is he almost kind of going, look, I told you so, and can you speak to my neighbours now and go, see what I mean? So what I've been banging on about for the last 12 years.
It is interesting. Like in the last year or so, we've had a lot more, farming friends, farming neighbours. I wouldn't say, they'll never say, oh, that looks good, but just looking a bit more and being a bit more, aware of what's happening, and asking a few questions and being a bit more nosy. So really? There's definitely, interest.
Okay. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, amazing. Well, look, thank you for showing me, and good to see it in the real world. Look, I think this is epic. If people want to find out more details, just because they're nosy, or if they're a farmer, or if they want to buy a credit, where's the best place for people to go to find out more? Yeah, on our website. You can Google Gentle Farming. It normally comes up, but it's gentle-farming.co.uk. Perfect. And there's a contact, and I'll be happy to chat to anybody, really. Amazing. Are you on any of the social media channels yourself? Yeah, we're on Twitter and LinkedIn. Thomas Gent on LinkedIn, and then Twitter and Instagram is just Gentle Farming. Amazing. All right, well, I'll put up links to all of your various channels on this as well. But I sort of feel like on behalf of humanity, thanks. Because if you pull this off, it's going to be awesome, isn't it? It's like, I just feel it's such a big opportunity, and it just feels like it should happen. It feels like a no-brainer. It's it's British based. It's, like I say, it's linked to what we eat. It's linked to farming. There's just so much good shit about what you're trying to pull off. So wish you the very best of luck, and thanks for sparing the time to have this conversation. Yeah, and thanks for coming. A hole. Yeah, thanks for coming. I'll dig a hole anytime. Awesome. All right, thank you. Wow, I hope you found that as interesting as I did. I'm sorry it's a pretty long conversation, but as always, I've found this utterly fascinating and such an important topic for our combined futures on planet Earth. The fact that simply changing how we farm could have such a huge impact on carbon capture is both staggering and inspiring. I really believe as a species we can learn to eat and to drink and to be merry and to enjoy our short and shared time on the planet, but to learn how to do it with a light touch, leaving the world in a better place for future generations. It is a privilege to get to explore these topics, and I'm so grateful that you choose to listen and come along and learn with me. Now, I may well take a little break on the podcast now as it's peak season in my own restaurant business on the south coast. Time is a little short. Releases may be paused, or at the least they might become a little more sporadic, but I hope to get back into a regular rhythm after the crazy summer period. So if you'd like me to keep recording shows, please do let me know, and let me know topics you find interesting. Would you like more restaurateurs or more hoteliers, more cool brands, more chefs? Do you think I go too far off on the sustainable and environmental issues? Let me know what you think, and that will guide future shows. You can get in touch with me via the contact box on the website or write to mark@humansofhospitality.co.uk, or visit the very same website to support the show by hitting the PayPal or the Patreon button, or perhaps you'd like to sponsor a show or two. For now, thanks again to Thomas for taking part. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm sure I'll be back again soon. All the best.